That system was built by American diplomats, negotiated by American lawyers, and enforced by American power. But now, that same system has been used to legally authorize unlimited economic warfare against the United States. And the international community, far from rushing to America's defense, is lining up to validate the move. The climactic quote that captures this moment comes not from a Canadian official or an American critic, but from a former U.S. trade representative who spoke on condition of anonymity. He said simply, "We built the cage, we just didn't think anyone would lock us inside it." In summary, the world just learned a harsh lesson about the nature of power. Infrastructure, whether physical or legal, determines outcomes. The United States spent 77 years building a trading system that locked in its advantages, protected its companies, and extended its influence. But it forgot one crucial detail. It built that system for a world where America was always the one invoking exceptions, never the one facing them. Today, Canada reminded the world that legal infrastructure is just infrastructure. It can be used by anyone who understands how it works. And once it is used against the nation that built it, there's no switch to flip, no button to push, no emergency override that restores the old order. The cage is locked, and the keys are in Ottawa. To understand the scale of what just occurred, we have to look beneath the headlines and into the hidden machinery of international trade law. Article 21 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade is not some obscure procedural footnote. It is the escape hatch built into the system for moments when diplomacy fails so catastrophically that normal rules cannot apply. The provision states, and I am quoting directly, that nothing in this agreement shall be construed to prevent any contracting party from taking any action which it considers necessary for the protection of its essential security interests. The key phrase there is any action. And the key word is considers. This is what legal scholars call a self-judging provision. The nation invoking it does not have to prove its security is threatened. It does not have to submit to arbitration. It does not have to convince a panel. It simply has to declare that its essential security interests are at risk. And under international law, that declaration is final. Now consider the geopolitical context that made this possible. The United States spent the past decade weaponizing its control over global financial infrastructure. It used the SWIFT system as a cudgel. It imposed extraterritorial sanctions. It demanded that allies choose between access to American markets and continued economic relationships with American adversaries. And for years, this strategy worked because no single nation had the legal cover to resist. But by violating its own agreements with Canada, by threatening Canadian sovereignty, and by ignoring the legislative mandates of its own Congress, the United States provided Canada with exactly the justification it needed to invoke the one provision of international law that overrides all others. The security exception. Intellectual property protections are suspended. Canadian companies can now manufacture products using American technology, American patents, and American research without paying a single dollar in licensing fees. Investment protections are suspended. The Canadian government can nationalize American-owned factories, American-owned real estate, and American-owned assets with no obligation to provide compensation under international trade law. Let that sink in for a moment. Under the legal framework that now governs the U.S.-Canada economic relationship, Canada can do anything it wants, and there is nothing the United States can do to stop it under the rules of the system it created. This is not a diplomatic disagreement. This is not a trade dispute. This is not a temporary misunderstanding between allies. What just happened at 4:47 p.m. Eastern Time represents a fundamental rupture in the architecture of global commerce. Canada has effectively declared that its economic relationship with the United States now operates under the same legal framework that applies during wartime. And here's what makes this moment truly extraordinary. The international community is not condemning this move. They are endorsing it. The World Trade Organization has declined to intervene. The European Union has voiced its support. Japan has signaled its approval. And the Democratic Trade Alliance has pledged to backfill any goods or services Canada can no longer safely import from America. The infrastructure power theme here is impossible to ignore. For decades, American strategists focused on military dominance and financial hegemony while allowing the physical and legal infrastructure of global trade to be built and maintained by others. The United States assumed that its role as the world's largest consumer market would always give it leverage, but leverage cuts both ways. Canada just demonstrated that the nation controlling the legal infrastructure, in this case, the ability to invoke a security exception written into every trade agreement the United States ever signed, can override market access entirely. Whoever controls the rules controls the game, and the United States just discovered that it no longer controls the rules.